The wind howled a mournful tune across the frozen expanse of the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta. Anya shivered, pulling the worn caribou hide tighter around her shoulders, but it did little to ward off the cold that gnawed at her bones. It was a cold born not just of the Alaskan winter, but of the isolation that had become her constant companion. For 5 years, she had been a wife, a sister, a daughter of the Yupik village of Mamterilek. Now, she was nothing. The village elders, their faces etched with the lines of tradition and sorrow, had delivered their verdict. "A barren woman brings no future to our people," the shaman had declared, his voice a low rumble. "The spirits have turned their backs on her." Anya had stood silent, her gaze fixed on the snow-covered ground, as the whispers of her former neighbors turned into a chorus of judgment. Her husband, once her protector, had offered no defense, his shame a physical weight that bent his shoulders. He had wanted a son, a hunter to follow in his footsteps, a legacy. She had given him nothing but empty promises and the silence of a home without a child's laughter. The banishment wasn't violent, but it was absolute. They took her few possessions, leaving her with only the clothes on her back and a small pouch of dried fish. She watched them turn their backs, a silent, unified wall of rejection, and recede into the village as the first snowflakes of a new storm began to fall. The world shrunk to the white of the snow, the grey of the sky, and the emptiness in her heart. For days, Anya walked. She had no destination, only the desperate urge to put distance between herself and the place that had cast her out. She followed the frozen river, her steps slow and methodical, driven by a primal need to survive. She rationed the dried fish, each piece a small, bitter comfort. Her mind drifted back to her grandmother's stories of the land, of how to read the tracks of a snowshoe hare, of the best places to find willow branches for a fire. These memories, once simple folklore, were now her only hope. One morning, her hunger and exhaustion became a physical ache. The world began to blur, the trees melting into a white haze. Her foot caught on a hidden root, and she tumbled forward, the impact stealing the last of her breath. She lay there, half buried in the snow, a cold that was no longer painful but strangely peaceful. She closed her eyes, ready to surrender to the great white silence. She was drifting in the quiet when a sound, not of the wind, broke through the haze. A low, rhythmic crunching. A man's voice, rough and deep, spoke in a language she barely understood, a mix of Russian and English. A large hand, calloused and warm, gently turned her over. Anya's eyes fluttered open to see a face weathered by sun and cold, framed by a thick, dark beard. He had the eyes of a wolf, grey and watchful, but there was an unexpected gentleness in his gaze. The man, a farmer named Grigory, lived a solitary life on the edge of the tundra, his small log cabin a lonely sentinel against the vastness. He had been checking his traps when he found her. He didn't ask questions, he simply scooped her into his strong arms, her body as light as a bundle of dry kindling. He carried her to his cabin, a haven of warmth and the scent of wood smoke. Inside, a small fire crackled in the hearth, casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. He laid her on a small cot and gave her a mug of hot broth, its warmth spreading through her veins. He spoke little, his words practical and to the point. He had no wife, no family, only the land and his few animals. Enya watched him from the cot. He was a man of the earth, his hands calloused from work, his clothes simple but clean. He seemed as much a part of this landscape as the trees outside his window. He had rescued her, but a new fear began to gnaw at her. What did he want in return? She was a woman without a home, without a future, a burden. He had saved her from the cold, but she was still barren, still cursed in the eyes of the world. The first night in his cabin, Anya felt the profound loneliness of her situation. She was safe, but not truly. She was a guest, a temporary resident in a life that was not her own. The warmth of the fire felt like a lie. She had lost her people, her purpose. Would this man too turn on her when he discovered the truth? As the night wore on, Grigori sat by the fire, mending a fishing net. He glanced over at her, his expression unreadable. Finally he spoke, his voice low. "You are safe here, little bird. Rest." Her heart ached for something more than safety. It ached for belonging. Anya spent the first week in Grigori's cabin in a daze of recovery. Her body, once on the brink of collapse, slowly mended, but her spirit remained a bruised and tender thing. Grigori was a man of routine and few words. He woke with the sun, tended to his small herd of goats, chopped wood, and worked his traps. Anya helped where she could, her hands finding purpose in mending torn clothes and preparing meals from the meager supplies. The silence between them was not awkward, it was a kind of truce. Grigori didn't pry into her past, and Anya didn't offer it. She was simply the woman he had found in the snow, a ghost of a person. He fed her, sheltered her, and allowed her to exist. One evening, as a blizzard raged outside, rattling the windows of the cabin, Grigori broke the quiet. "I need a woman in my life, Anya," he said, his voice as steady as the stones of his hearth. "Not as a burden, but as a partner. The winters are long, and a man is not meant to be alone forever." Anya's heart clenched. This was it, the demand she had been dreading, the reason for his kindness. Her voice, thin and reedy from disuse, trembled as she spoke. "I cannot give you children, Grigori. My people, they banished me for it. I am barren." Grigori turned from the fire, his grey eyes fixed on hers. There was no anger, no disappointment in them, only a profound weariness. "Children," he said, the word a heavy sigh. "Children are a blessing, yes, but they are not the only purpose of a life. The land gives me what I need. I want a partner, someone to share the burdens and the small joys, someone to warm my bed, not to fill it with the cries of a babe." He reached for a small, carved wooden bear on the mantel. "This was my wife's," he said, his voice softening. "She died a year ago from the sickness. We had no children either. It was a sadness, but not a deal-breaker. Our life together was enough. My heart is not empty because my bed was not filled with a child, but because it is empty now without her." He was offering her a kind of salvation, a life she had never imagined, a life not of duty and procreation, but of partnership and mutual support. He saw her not as a vessel, but as a person. The weight of her banishment, the shame she had carried, began to lift. "I will work for you," she said, her voice stronger now, filled with a desperate hope. "I will be a good partner. I will help with everything. I am strong. I am not afraid of work." He smiled, a rare, genuine smile that transformed his rugged face. "I know, Anya. I have seen it. You have the spirit of the bear, strong and resilient. You have survived." They made a silent pact. There was no ceremony, no grand declaration. Just a shared understanding in the quiet of a blizzard-ridden night. Anya moved her few belongings to a small space next to his bed. The act was not one of submission, but of joining. They were two outcasts, two souls battered by the world, seeking warmth and comfort in each other. The days that followed were a gradual dance of discovery. Anya learned about Grigori's past, his journey from Russia, the hardships he had faced to build his homestead. He learned about her village, her customs, the deep-seated traditions that had led to her banishment. They spoke of the land, of the animals, of the rhythm of the seasons. Their conversations were quiet, punctuated by long silences where only the crackle of the fire and the whisper of the wind filled the space. Slowly, tentatively, a different kind of bond formed between them. It was not a passionate romance, but a deep, abiding connection forged in shared solitude. They learned to read each other's moods, to anticipate each other's needs. One evening, as Anya was preparing to go to bed, Grigori gently took her hand. "You are no longer a guest, Anya," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "This is your home now." For the first time since her banishment, Anya felt the profound truth of those words. She was not just warming his bed, She was warming his life, and in doing so, she was finding her own warmth, her own purpose, and her own home. Spring came to the delta, a slow, gentle thaw that transformed the landscape from a monochromatic canvas to a riot of greens and browns. The ice on the river cracked with a sound like thunder, and the first buds appeared on the willow trees. The world was waking up, and so was Anya. Her face, once gaunt and pale, was now filled with the healthy glow of a woman who had found her purpose. She worked alongside Grigory in the small field he had cleared, planting potatoes and greens. Her hands, once accustomed to the delicate work of beading and weaving, now wielded a hoe with practiced ease. The work was hard, but it was honest and satisfying. They were building something together, a life from the ground up. Their relationship had deepened. The physical intimacy was a quiet comfort, a gentle warmth that spoke of shared trust and mutual respect. There were no grand declarations of love, only small daily acts of kindness. Grigory bringing her a cup of hot tea as she worked, Anya mending his favorite shirt with care. They were a team, a quiet force against the vast, indifferent wilderness. One day, a traveling trader from a nearby village passed by their cabin. He recognized Anya from her old life. His eyes widened in shock, and a sneer twisted his lips. "The barren one," he muttered under his breath, but Grigory stepped forward, his massive frame a shield. "She is my wife," he said, his voice a low rumble of warning. The trader, intimidated by the farmer's size and unyielding gaze, quickly left. Anya watched him go, a shiver running down her spine. The outside world had found them. The shame of her past, the judgment she had thought she had escaped, lingered like a bad smell. Later that evening, as they sat by the fire, Anya confessed her fear. "He will tell them. They will know I am here. They will come for me. They will not let me have this." Grigory took her hand, his calloused thumb stroking her knuckles. "Let them come," he said, his voice resolute. "This is our land, Anya, our life. We are two people, but together we are strong. We have the land, we have each other. No one can take that from us." His words were a shield, a bulwark against the judgment of the world. Anya realized then that she was no longer alone. She had a protector, a partner, a home. The banishment had not been an end, but a beginning. It had led her to him, to a different kind of family, one built not on blood, but on choice and shared struggle. As the summer wore on, their crop flourished. The potato plants grew thick and green, a symbol of their shared labor and a promise of a future. The little cabin, once a place of lonely existence, was now filled with the smells of baking bread and the quiet sounds of two people living a life together. One day, as they were harvesting the first potatoes, a group of people from Anya's old village appeared on the horizon. The trader had told them. The shame and judgment were etched on their faces. The shaman, older and frailer, stood at the front. Anya felt a surge of fear, but Grigory stood tall, his hand resting on the handle of his axe. He did not need to speak. His presence was a statement. This was his land, and she was his. The shaman looked at Anya, then at the lush field of potatoes. He saw not a barren woman, but a woman of strength, working the land, thriving in a way she never had in the village. He saw her face, filled not with shame, but with a quiet dignity. He saw the love and respect in Grigory's eyes. He took a step forward, his voice softer than Anya had ever heard it. "The spirits were wrong," he said, his gaze fixed on her. "They did not see the harvest you would bring." Anya did not respond. She did not need their validation. Her purpose, her worth, was no longer defined by their traditions. It was defined by the life she had built with Grigory. The group, seeing the strength in her silence and the unshakable bond between the two, turned and left, disappearing back into the vastness of the land. Anya turned to Grigory, her eyes filled with tears of relief and gratitude. "We are free," she whispered. He smiled, a genuine, warm expression that erased the years of solitude from his face. "We were always free, Anya. We just had to find each other to see it." She bent down, her hands in the rich dark soil, pulling up a potato, a symbol of their new life. It was a humble, perfect thing, a testament to a love born not of a fairy tale, but of the harsh realities of the Alaskan wilderness. A love that had proven that a home is not just a place, but a person, and that the greatest harvest is not of the land, but of the human heart.